As you guys can see, we are beginning World War One. This, of course, needed to come after imperialism and nationalism, not just timeline-wise, but also because they're going to affect World War One and create such a crazy big um, war. So you guys can see the causes for World War One are nationalism, imperialism, alliances, militarism, and finally the straw that broke the camel's back, the assassination of France Ferdinand. So we have nationalism. Nationalism, well, kind of starts, not that well, so you see, before you had countries that were going for their king, and you have Napoleon who comes through and he creates nationalism. People are now Frenchmen. People want to fight underneath France. And the other thing that is crazy is when everybody comes together to kind of take out Napoleon, they come together as individuals, not as a conglomerate of group or some sort of team. When Napoleon is exiled and he comes back, they actually have to pause or postpone the Congress of Vienna to go back and fight him, and then they come back to it. Now the problem again here is that they were, well, individuals fighting, so they kind of, well, didn't care as much as maybe you or I would if we were on the same team. So you have imperialism, you have the unification of Germany, and as mentioned last week, if you listen to what I read or you rode the German one, Germany starts kind of moving around and they want to get some countries. They want to have people working for them. In a sense, it's like a country who has other slave countries working for them. Well, the problem is you have one, you guys can see the colors here. The first thing there is Prussia. So Prussia owned a couple different places. Well, they start coming together. Well, when your neighbor starts getting big and strong, you, well, maybe don't like them as much. And France is in that boat. They go through and try to annex in 1871 following the Franco-Prussian War. This, of course, is going to have some, well, big problems as the fact of, well, a lot of these places, France, and you have these wars, that's going to cause some pretty hard feelings. So you get alliances. You get the Triple Alliances, Germany, Italy, and Austria-Hungary. The Triple Alliance was in 1882. And now France and Russia, as Germany and these other countries are kind of coming together, France and Russia are kind of on both sides, and they both start seeing things get taken from them or just negative things happening because they're together. So they start the Franco-Russian alliance. This is in 1891. It was more because they started working together. They had agreements. They weren't necessarily together, and then finally it became something. And then eventually you get the French and England alliance in 1904, and then Russia joins that in 1909. Now, the big thing here is they had a threat of the German Navy, and that's why Britain joins and Russia joins later to make the Triple Entente. It's a French word. Basically, you have the three alliance versus the three alliance, but to differentiate, we call it the Triple Entente. Now, we have militarism. As mentioned, these countries come together. Well, the other thing is somebody's working out and you want to beat them in some sort of competition, and you see them working out 3 days a week. Maybe you start working out 4 days a week. They say you, and they decide they're going to work out 5. You see them, and then of course you go ahead and work out more. This was seen in military. In a sense, people went through and started working out more and working out more and working out more, or in this case, getting more weapons. Building up military personnel is pretty easy, but maybe I look over and see that you guys invented, I don't know, some sort of new feature. Maybe you have a gun that can fire 10 rounds in a minute, and I go through and say, let's see, let's get 15. And so we start getting things. We end up with a machine gun. We end up with better boats. We end up eventually with tanks. We end up with all sorts of things. It's called an arm race. And the reason it's called an arms race is because you're trying to build up bigger arms so that you can win a battle if it comes down to it. So basically, everybody's on edge of war. You have nationalism in the Balkan region. So you have Serbs, Bosnians, Croatians, Slovenians. They all want independence. It's all around this area. you guys can see right there. Now, the Serbians gain independence. They're supported by Russia. And in being supported by Russia, again, Russia doesn't really like Austria-Hungary. So they support this group. It's what we would call nowadays kind of like Cold War tactics. But they support them. And in doing so, the Russians go through. Well, Austria-Hungary in response goes through and takes over Bosnia Herzegovina. We just call it Bosnia. But they go ahead and take that to stop Serbia kind of getting all these other people together. Because if Serbia was alone and there was nothing there, maybe they would become their own nation or a bigger nation. So we end up with kind of this negative feeling there. Well, you guys can see this picture. It's like everybody's getting bigger and bigger weapons just to go ahead and, well, kind of fight each other. Now, if you look in the far distance, you can see, very back there, is the United States. What we are doing at this point is what we call isolationism. What we really wanted to do is make as much money as we could off of people going to war. And if they went to war and we could make money, great. So that's exactly what we did. As they start arming up, we start getting our production going and producing different things. But ultimately, we just want to export or import the things that they have that we want. We don't want to be a part of it, certainly don't want to lose lives, and certainly don't want it coming to our country. So this is a map of Europe in 1914, right before the war. You guys can see the blue is a triple entente. You have the United Kingdom, France, Russia. You can also see Morocco, Algeria, and Tanzania. They're part of France. You have a whole bunch of other countries that are not a part of it. You have the Triple Alliance, which is Germany, Austria-Hungary, and Italy. You can see those areas there. And then finally, you have the Russian alliance. Now, this is key to note. You have Montenegro and Serbia. Those two countries are a part of an alliance with Russia, meaning that if something happens to them, precursor, if something happens to them, Russia says, hey, we're going to come in and step in and help. Yep, that's not going to end well. So this event that happens, you guys can see it says simulation, but in reality, what ends up by happening here is on June 1914, Bosnia Revolutionary, this guy goes through and shoots Archduke Franz Ferdinand, the heir to the Austrian-Hungarian throne. Now, they were kind of going through to show off who he was and that kind of thing. Now, the question is, what do you do when the heir to the throne is killed? Austria, what do you do? Well, the question is not more of what do. They don't want to come out and just go to war over one thing. So they go ahead and send Serbia an ultimatum. The reason is Serbia, because, well, the guy may have been Bosnian, but the point of this is he kind of linked to Serbia. So they give him 48 hours. But Austria's demands were basically, you can't have free speech about the monarchy. You can't have can't add other countries that are of Slavic descent. You just have to stay your size. No propaganda against the Austrian. Getting rid of any military people who have done propaganda against Austria-Hungary. So basically, what they have here is impossible because you'd have to get rid of everybody. And the point of this being impossible was, I'm going to give you something that you can't do, so we get to go to war with you, and now it's your fault. So Serbia goes back, and what are they going to do? Serbia goes and tries to compromise, but refuses two of the points. Now, the idea here was, hey, we're going to do a couple things here, and we're going to, I don't know, maybe not have these problems. Well, the problem here became that Austria-Hungary was not willing to allow that to happen. And because of that, what does Austria-Hungary do? Austria-Hungary declares war July 28, 1914, to prevent the Slavic nationalism from threatening empire. Austria chooses war. Now, again, this is going to be pretty negative. So what now? Discuss in your groups. You guys can see this. This would be more for if we were actually having class. But what will happen? Russia steps forward to help Serbia? Yes, because they have an alliance. Will Germany enter the war? Yes, because they have an alliance. Will France enter the war? Yes, because they have an alliance with Russia. Will Britain enter the war? Yes, because they have an alliance with France and Russia. Oh, man. These alliances, what ends up by happening here? We have Germany declares on August 2nd, Germany declares war on France and invades Belgium. Should Britain now go to war against? Yes, they're going to go to war. They have to. It's your best friends getting into a fight, and they're calling for you. You got to help. Unfortunately, that is the way it goes. So the domino effect, the triple entente, Russia, France, Belgium, Britain, Italy promised Austria-Hungary land, Central Powers, Austria-Hungary, German, Ottoman Empire, and Bulgaria. You can see here this picture. It says, if you touch me, if you make a move, if you hit that little feller, if you strike my friend, if you hit him, yo or ho, there if you chaps. Again, you're going to end up with my friend comes in, his friend comes in, your friend comes in, their friend, and their friend. And so now we have a big brawl, or in this case, World War I. So the questions are there for you. Kind of how I want you to think about how this affects and how this kind of goes through. I mean, if we really look at this, why should they? Do these countries have advantage or disadvantage? Yes, each country has an advantage in some reason. Maybe they are small, but if you add them to your numbers, that's going to be huge. But really, why should they enter the war? Why didn't one or two of them just stop and say, you know what, we're going to let these two countries, or we're going to mediate? That's a discussion we'll have when we go ahead and meet. Until then, I'll see you guys during our Zoom meeting.